Sven Ortner, NGR Müdürü, plastiği döngünün içinde tutmak ve döngüsel ekonomiye geçiş sunumu için sahneye alalım. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be here as a speaker and joining this panel today. As introduced, my name is Sven Ortner. I'm Area Sales Manager at Next Generation Recycling Machines, an Austrian company focusing on the development and manufacturing of plastic recycling technologies. And as Celia, and I hope I said the name correct, introduced for her, she said that Turkey is in a difficult position at the moment as the buying power is not the very best right now. I anyhow have to congratulate you and thank you at the same time, as Turkey is still one of our biggest customers, if you want to say so. So the Turkish industry is one of our biggest customers worldwide, and globally the country with the second most NGR recycling machines installed. And we still see, beside the fact that Forex is of course getting worse at these days, we still have a lot of investments into NGR recycling technologies within Turkey. So the demand and the interest to get higher quality products and more of them within the Turkish industry is still as big as it used to be 5 years, 6 years, or 10 years ago. What I want to show you today is, okay, we talk about recycling, we talk about global challenges and why the circular economy can help to overcome these. I will skip the point of the solutions for post-consumer recycling. I think to go into the depth of each and every recycling technology would be a little bit too much for this panel, but I'm happy to share more information later on if you would like. The production facilities and the global plastic production is still on a rise. So it's not really declining. The usage of plastics all over the world is getting bigger and bigger, and just the distribution of plastics worldwide is becoming a little bit different. So when we see in the European Union that the usage of plastics percentage-wise was reduced in the last couple of years, in China, of course, it increased a lot, and the total numbers always increased. So we are still far away from a situation that less plastics are produced globally. In total, in Europe, we have around 50 megatons production of plastic materials. Majority of this goes into packaging and building and construction, and then all the other applications like automotive, etc. And packaging has a very crucial and important reason. It's first of all hygiene, and secondly, to extend the shelf life. And we also, and actually we as NGR thought that when the COVID pandemic started, that will be the worst time since our company was found. Because we thought, okay, now we cannot travel anymore, now everybody will just double think if he or she should do an investment into a new recycling machine, etc. But the contrary was the case. The first year of COVID was our best fiscal year ever. The second year of COVID even topped that. And we saw actually a shift from the trend to avoid plastics to a world which accepts and understands again why plastics are important. And that is, at the one hand side, hygiene, and the second one, to extend the shelf lives. Everybody can imagine an open market with food openly available for everybody and everybody can touch and fill it later in his own package is rather unhygienic compared to pre-packed goods. The plastics production we see will still be increasing, although, and maybe we have later time at the panel, I was at the United Nations Environmental Programme headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya last week for the International Negotiations Council number 3 for the new Plastics Treaty, which was a very interesting and very different experience for myself. So there's a lot of drive towards a cap for resin production. So people or a lot of non-profit organizations would like to not even cap or limit, but reduce or remove at all the plastics production, the virgin material production. And it was also the first time in my career that I experienced a situation where the recycling industry was also meant to be some kind of bad, in a way that a lot of people said there, okay, you keep the gate open for all the big petrochemical companies because they have an excuse to say, okay, but my material is recyclable. And it's the wrong way of handling of the human beings. Anyhow, I hope we have a little bit time to discuss about this later, because I think I also brought a quite good example of what distinguishes trash or garbage and feedstock. It's basically the value, and I brought one example with me. So we see still for the next years there's a big growth in the plastics industry. Nevertheless, the recycling and the careful usage of plastics and packaging is more than obvious when we look at the Earth Overshoot Day. And the Earth Overshoot Day basically describes when the human's demand for ecological resources in a given year exceeds what the Earth can regenerate in the same year. 1 year ago, the date of the Earth Overshoot Day was the 28th of July. So after a bit more than half of the year, the human beings have used all the resources which are given by Earth already after a little bit more than half a year. That makes it a bit more obvious, I think, why recycling of our resources is such a high priority. The circular economy for plastic products, okay, we always say it's pushed by the EU, which I feel is kind of funny, because the EU tends to tell other regions, other countries in the world how it should be, how it works, etc. If we compare the recycling rates of South Africa compared to the average within the EU, South Africa is recycling more than the European Union in terms of plastics. So the European Union, we have a couple of countries which are on a very good level, which is Germany, which is Austria, but we have plenty of countries which are far behind with their recycling rates, and we still have to push and to work a lot on our own numbers before teaching other countries, other areas, other regions how to do the job. And as said before, Turkey, for instance, is the country with the second biggest number of NGR machines installed worldwide. The only one where we have more machines is the United States of America. Why the circular economy? I skipped this slide, I go to this one. That's describing the market size of Europe and the production of plastics of Europe and the usage in Europe. And when you go to the lower end of this graphic, you will see that actually from the 48 megatons plastics produced and used in the European Union, only approximately 5.5 megatons are reused as a recycled product in the European Union. And that equals more than 10%, but not more than this. So in total, we have a high potential and a high possibility of economic growth in this sector. We see now with the new regulations coming up of the EU in 2025, with a reuse of plastic for PET, for instance, in the bottles, that there is a high investment, there are high investments, and there is a lot of demand and a lot of requirements, but it's still a long way to go before we could call Europe as being a circular market. The challenges is, of course, the input material is very pure and unstable quality from time to time. The control of this input feedstock is a difficulty for the recyclers. The requirements on recycled pellets is raised all the time, And that's especially difficult for polyolefins. And that's where we actually drive towards a recycling compounding industry for polyolefins to add certain additives and chemicals to get a higher quality of R pellets for the polypropylene polyethylene market. The only exemption on that side is the PET market, and I have two slides which also should show the advantages and the necessity of recycling and why it's, from my opinion, the route to go in future. This slide I skip it. I want to have more time on the panel discussion later. It just shows the different sources for recycling. Of course, there's pre-consumer waste, so any type of factory waste, which has a very easy possibility of recycling and a very high quality. Pellet can be produced, same is for the post-industrial waste. These two actually I wouldn't call too challenging at all. The only challenge we have in this field is multi-material compositions, especially in the film packaging, multi-layer film packaging. If I have a structure combined of different polymers, PET, PP, or PE, and so on, and then I have a mixed pellet, the end use of these pellets is, of course, very limited. Although we have made also trials with a big German blow film manufacturer, where we have introduced the multi-layer film recycling, multi-layer packaging film recycling into a milk pouch film. So in the middle layer, there was actually this multi-layer film introduced and hidden a little bit. But it's a big challenge. So the development, the design of the materials should head towards monomaterials in future to ease the way of recycling as well for the recyclers. And then, of course, challenging is the post-consumer waste. I give the example from my own municipality. So I have for plastics at home 7 different bins. I don't have a paper bin, I don't have a garbage bin, a waste bin, I don't have a plastics bin. I have a bin for paper, I have a bin for carton, I have my normal household waste, if you want to call it, and then I have my plastic sorting station. So I have 7 different bins because we have to separate different films into different bins. We have to separate, or we had to separate, they changed now with the tethered caps, but we had to separate the cap, the closure of a PET bottle from the bottle, and we have to separate other plastic materials from each other. And the reason why we do this at home is we have collection centers to bring our waste. So if I bring the waste to a collection center, I either have the choice to sort it there, or I have sorted it at home and then just have to throw the bins into the right sections there. I feel that's the most, I would say it's the most efficient when it comes to recycling. It takes a little bit of time, but it's as always, once you're used to it, it's easy. And I remember when I was a child, we have not recycled plastics at all. We have removed the paper from the rest of the waste and the glass, but the plastics went all into one bin. Then we have recycled the plastics all into one bin, and now we have several streams for the plastic waste. And I think for the recyclers, that's the best way because they get pre-sorted waste already from the consumer. The comparison of packaging, and that's why I think that's what is, from my perspective, the most important comparison here. Normal PET plastic bottle compared to an aluminum can or a glass bottle. So the weight of the solid waste generated for the same packaging, for the same quantity of beverage in an aluminum can is 3 times higher than on a PET bottle. Respectively, in a glass bottle, it's 14 times higher than in a PET bottle. The energy which you need to create these kind of bottles is again 1/3. So the PET bottle needs 1/3 of the energy of aluminum cans and 1/5 of the energy of a glass bottle. The global warming potential, I skip this and go to the emissions produced because that's like the CO2 production, what we're always telling. A PET water bottle is 1/10 polluting the environment to produce it. In comparison to a glass bottle, which is in Austria also especially, perceived as being the most environmental friendly, driven by commercials on TV, driven by pure lobbying, I would say, but from the production perspective and even its recyclability, the PET bottle is the most sustainable. So the PET bottle made from virgin is the most sustainable, and now we compare it to recycled PET, and PET is the only material, the only polymer which can be recycled in a mechanical way again and again and again, and we have done circles in our own laboratory line where we have recycled it more than 25 times, and we always manage to get back to resin standards, to resin mechanical strength, to resin color values, and to decontamination values where we meet full food-approved pellets. And I heard it before in the panel before. In Turkey, it is still not allowed to reuse mechanically recycled pellets. I always wonder why, and I believe that sooner or later it will be allowed because it's the most economic solution. It takes least energy and less resources to recycle mechanical compared to a chemical recycling plant. And I'm saying this with working for a company which sister company actually is developing and manufacturing chemical recycling technologies. So we are in both fields, but if you make the pure comparison between mechanical and chemical recycling, the mechanical recycling so far at least still is much, much better than the chemical recycling. So this slide just shows the comparison of resin-made PET bottles and PET bottles that contains recycled PET contents. If we have a bottle made from 100% recycled PET, the reduction in greenhouse gases emission, in CO2 emissions, is by 60%. We lower the energy demand by 75%. And the process and transport costs reduction is 40%. But you see also on this slide on the right side that even if you add only 25 or 50% of recycled content, you significantly reduce the greenhouse emissions, and 50%, for instance, lead to a 30% reduction in greenhouse emissions of a new PET bottle. And I would like just to get back once to this slide. If you now consider the glass bottle compared in a produced emissions, it's even worse in the comparison to a glass bottle. So you see that the glass bottle is even more environmental harmful than a PET bottle. And as I said, I was in Nairobi, Kenya last week for the International Negotiation Council of the United Nations for the new Plastics Treaty. And it's strange to see the number of lobbies who try to work against the plastics production, who try to cap the plastics production, who try to even badmouth the recycling of plastics, to put it in a section where recycling would be just an excuse for the polymer manufacturers to produce further and don't stop their production. I think it's the most sustainable material in the world, and it depends how people treat it, how people take care of the end use, and not to throw it out of a window, for instance, or out into the forests, but to make sure that the plastics end up in a recycling facility. And with this, I want to end my presentation and thank you all very much for your attention.
Teşekkürler. Size de bir sorum olacak. Şimdi siz dediniz ki Türkiye'de mekanik dönüşüme hali hazırda izin verilmiyor. Anlamadım. Halbuki daha verimli, daha çıkmadı mevzuat belki. Peki sizin gibi firmalar ya da bu dönüşümü yapan firmalar daha ön alıp bu tarz ülkelerde yatırım yapamaz mı? Çünkü illaki inanıyorsanız mekanik dönüşüm oluşacak. Bir de Afrika'ya yoğunluklu anladığım kadarıyla yatırımlar sürüyor. Zor bir pazar. Çin orada. Bilmiyorum Çin ne kadar büyük orada sizin yaptığınız sektördeki büyüklüğünü. Ama düşünmez misiniz? Bu birinci sorum. İkinci sorum, cam ve PET karşılaştırdınız. Burada camın daha fazla üretiminin, daha doğrusu dönüştürülmesinin enerji sarf ettiğinden bahsettiniz. Bununla ilgili global olarak daha bilinçli bir tüketici edinebilmek adına ya da tüketici olabilmek adına dünya genelinde bir çalışma yapılamaz mı sizin gibi firmalar tarafından?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think I have to explain a little bit about NGR. So we are a company developing and manufacturing plastic recycling technologies. As said before, within Turkey, or Turkey is the country with the second biggest installations of our plastic recycling machines, mechanical recycling machines. The legislation in Turkey doesn't allow, as far as I know, the reuse...
Üretim yeri kurmak adına. Yani üretmek adına.
Yes.
O açıdan söyledim. Yani fabrika, doğrudan yatırım. Bölge için.
Yes, that's another point. It's actually not necessary because there's more than one customer or Turkish manufacturer who is invested into a PET recycling plant that actually gives food grade pellets. We have one customer in Izmir using our machine on a daily basis, and he gets pellets which are 100% food approved according to FDA and EFSA standards. So the standards for the Food and Drug Administration and the standards for the European Food Safety Authorization. So he's meeting the food standards for Europe and for the United States and actually globally, beside countries like Turkey still where the legislation doesn't allow the reuse of rPET in the bottles. I think that there is a need of also PAGEV to discuss with the ministries and to show, and we are more than happy to support on that side, to educate and to provide documents about the food safety of recycled pellets. But as NGR itself, we are not investing into recycling projects for the reason that it would be very difficult if we want to sell to one customer and then to the other one we want to sell, and at the same side we invest, so we are somehow competing with our own customers. That's a little bit tricky, unless we would invest into everybody.
Thank you.